The moment she slid the credit card across the cafe table, she was smiling in a way that felt harmless, almost playful, like nothing real could possibly come from it. Outside, rain streaked the windows in thin silver lines, blurring the city into something softer than it really was. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and sugar hung heavy in the air. She didn't know that in less than 24 hours, that small laugh, that careless gesture, would grow into something that would sit heavy on her chest for years. He had been standing in line ahead of her, counting coins with hands that shook just slightly. Not the dramatic kind of shaking, but the kind that comes from long exhaustion, from carrying too much alone. His jacket was worn thin at the elbows, his shoes clean but old, and his eyes kept drifting toward the door, as if he was always one step away from leaving. When the cashier announced the total, he hesitated, cheeks burning, and then quietly stepped aside, apologizing under his breath. She watched it happen with the detached curiosity of someone who had never had to count coins for coffee. To her, the cafe was a stop between meetings, a place to kill time while the city worked for her. She was successful, confident, used to being the one people leaned on. So when he muttered something about needing to get back to his kid and started to leave empty, she spoke without thinking. She offered to pay. He turned, startled, eyes wide with embarrassment and gratitude tangled together. He tried to refuse, but she insisted, tapping her card against the counter. It felt good. Being generous, it felt even better when he thanked her with a quiet sincerity that lingered longer than the transaction itself. They ended up sitting at the same table, not because either of them planned it, but because the cafe was crowded and the rain made leaving inconvenient. Conversation started lightly, the way it often does between strangers who believe they'll never meet again. She learned he was a single dad named Daniel, recently laid off, trying to hold things together for his 6-year-old daughter. He spoke carefully, choosing words like stepping stones, always making sure not to sound like he was asking for pity. She listened with half an ear at first, nodding politely, sipping her latte. His story felt distant, like something she had seen in a movie. Struggle existed, of course, but not in her immediate world. When he mentioned his rent being overdue and his bank account sitting dangerously close to zero, she laughed softly, not cruelly, just awkwardly, unsure how else to respond. Then she did it, almost on impulse, almost as a joke to ease the heaviness in the air. She pulled out her credit card and slid it toward him, smiling as if she were offering a napkin. Use it if you need to, she said lightly. Just don't buy a yacht, she laughed. He did single quotes. Daniel stared at the card as though it were something fragile, something that could break if he touched it. His hand stayed folded in his lap. He shook his head, insisting he couldn't, that he wouldn't. She waved it off, telling him she was serious, that it was fine, that he could buy groceries or gas, whatever he needed. In her mind, it was a symbolic gesture, a kind moment that would make a good story later. She never imagined he would actually use it. Eventually, she stood to leave, sliding the card back into her wallet when he still hadn't reached for it. She felt satisfied, convinced she had done her part by offering. They exchanged polite goodbyes, and she stepped back into her comfortable life, the rain no longer bothering her. What she didn't know was that as she left, Daniel sat there for a long time, staring at the empty space on the table where the card had been. Pride battled desperation inside him. He hated the idea of taking from a stranger, hated the weakness it implied. But when he checked his phone and saw the message from his landlord, when he thought of his daughter's empty fridge, and the notice from the power company sitting unopened at home, something inside him cracked out later that night. After putting his daughter to bed with promises he wasn't sure he could keep, he made a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. He used the card details she had scribbled on a napkin when he finally accepted, her laughter still echoing in his ears. He told himself he would only take what he absolutely needed. He told himself he would pay it back someday. Across the city, she slept peacefully, unaware that her joke had become someone else's lifeline. By morning, she was rushing through her routine, coffee in hand, phone buzzing with notifications she barely glanced at. It wasn't until she sat down in her office, sunlight spilling across her desk, that she noticed the first alert. A grocery store charge, modest, reasonable. She smiled faintly, thinking good. At least he used it wisely. Then another alert came, a utility payment, then a pharmacy, then a gas station. Each notification stacked on the last, forming a quiet, creeping unease. Her smile faded. She told herself not to overreact. She had offered, after all, but the charges didn't stop. By midday, her phone felt heavier in her hand. A rental payment, a clothing store, a children's supply shop. None of it was extravagant, but together it painted a picture she hadn't prepared herself to see. This wasn't someone splurging. This was someone surviving. Still, irritation bubbled up. She thought of her own bills, her plans, the boundaries she felt had been crossed. The word joke echoed in her mind, sharp and accusing. She imagined telling her friends about the foolish things she had done, the lesson learned about trusting strangers. Then, the last notification arrived, and everything changed. It was a charge from a small hospital. Her breath caught. Her irritation dissolved into something colder, heavier. Without thinking, she called the number he had given her, the one she hadn't expected to use. It rang and rang before he answered, voice tight, strained. He apologized immediately, words tumbling over each other, fear thick in every sentence. His daughter had collapsed that morning. A fever they thought was nothing had turned into something dangerous. He hadn't known who else to turn to. He promised he would pay her back every cent, even if it took his whole life. As she listened, something inside her shifted. The cafe, the rain, her laughter, it all came rushing back. But now it felt different, distorted by the reality of what he had been facing. This wasn't a man taking advantage. This was a father choosing between pride and his child's life. She felt shame rise, hot and sudden, not because of the money, but because of how lightly she had treated his pain, because of how safe she had felt making a joke out of someone else's desperation. She told him to stay with his daughter. She told him not to worry about the money. When she hung up, her hands were trembling. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Meetings felt meaningless. Numbers on screens seemed small compared to the image in her mind of a little girl in a hospital bed and a father pacing helplessly beside her. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed every moment, every expression she had missed, every warning sign she had ignored. By morning, regret had settled into resolve. She went to the hospital, unsure if she even had the right to be there. When she saw Daniel, he looked smaller than she remembered, shoulders hunched, eyes red with exhaustion and fear. His daughter lay sleeping, color slowly returning to her cheeks. He stood when he saw her, panic flashing across his face, ready to apologize again, ready to beg. She stopped him with a gentle shake of her head. In that quiet room, surrounded by the soft beeping of machines, something unspoken passed between them. She saw not a broke stranger, but a man who had carried more than anyone should have to alone. He saw not a laughing woman with a credit card, but someone willing to show up when it mattered. Over the following weeks, she helped in ways she never had before, not with jokes or gestures meant to make herself feel good, but with time, attention, and respect. She helped him find work, connected him with resources, watched his daughter while he went to interviews. Each small act stitched something back together inside her. Daniel changed too. With stability came confidence. With support came strength. He found a job that valued his dedication, started paying her back slowly, though she never asked him to. Their lives, once passing briefly in a cafe, became intertwined in ways neither of them expected, but the real transformation was quieter, deeper. She stopped laughing at stories of struggle. She started listening. She learned that kindness isn't a performance, and generosity isn't a joke. It's a responsibility. Years later, when she thought back to that rainy afternoon, regret still lingered, but it no longer crushed her. It reminded her. It kept her humble. It kept her human. Because sometimes the smallest, most careless moments reveal the greatest truths. That behind every broke single dad is a story of resilience we don't see. That a joke to one person can be a lifeline to another. And that real kindness begins when we stop laughing and start understanding. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to look twice at the people around you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Kindness Talks channel. You never know whose life might change because you chose compassion over laughter.